Welcome to another episode of Step by Step Talks. Today, I have a person who has done so much for the world. He is the owner and founder of Wealth Insurance, and he takes care of people who take care of everyone else. Where are you going to find somebody like Mark Halpern? He's very well known in Canada. He's worked with many advisors. He has mentored, he's coached through his program of Power Platinum. He's going to talk about legacy philanthropy. He's going to talk about accidental philanthropy. Some some of these words I will also say I'm not very familiar with, and he's going to teach us why it's important to understand what these terminologies are, especially as because Step by Step Talks believes very firmly in women being financially independent. And today we want to talk about teaching financial literacy and adding it into curricula of schools, and why it's important for children to understand financial independence and financial planning. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you Mark Helper. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Rohini. Thank you so much for having me. We tried this a few times, but because of your amazing persistence, which I think is probably one of the most important qualities you can have, we actually did this. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, I did tell you that rejection is my biggest motivator. I was not going to let you reject me. I wanted this interview. You're far too important to be left, not to be interviewed. Anyway, without further ado, let's go ahead. Mark, do you want to start by explaining to us how you got into the financial planning industry? What prompted you to get into this industry?
Yeah, often what happens is it's based on real life, true events that happen with people. Like that's how we ended up in our career, and it's not so dissimilar for me. I've been a professional advisor, Rohini, for 33 years, but I like to tell people that my real start was in 1974, 50 years ago, when my father of blessed memory died of a massive heart attack at the age of 50. I was 11. I was the youngest of four boys, and my mother at the time, who was 48, had to go back to work to support our family. It was very, very hard for us. We had to develop a struggle muscle to be successful. But my dad loved us, but he was a busy engineer. Unfortunately, there was no will, there was very little savings, and there was no life insurance, no life insurance. So it was very hard for us. But fast forward, Raini, I work with some of Canada's most successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and affluent families, and you'd think they too would have it all together. But I'd suggest 80% of the time they don't. They're just so busy. Like every one of your listeners. We all have ADD, or this stuff is, you list of 50 things to do. This is like 75, right? So what we do is we help people in three areas. One is in estate planning, making sure people's financial architecture and their furniture line up with reality, like wills, powers of attorneys, shareholders agreements, etc. Second area is tax mitigation strategies. We like our clients to keep their taxes for themselves and their families, and we use tax exempt insurance strategies there. And the third area is philanthropy. We like people to create enduring family legacies, often just by converting taxes into charity. So there's no cookie cutter, but it's a wonderful thing to help people to optimize their estates and preserve their money and go from success to significance.
So you learned at a very young age that how important it was when you saw your mom get back to work, when she didn't need to. I mean, she never expected to, let's put it that way. And she went back to work, and obviously you suffered, at home. You didn't have the two incomes or one income, or your dad's income there, and you had to learn. Now tell me, if this was taught in school, let's say we put some curricula into schools and teach children about early financial habits, learning about budgeting, saving, investing from a young age, right? I strongly believe that we will have more successful people. There'll be empowerment, there'll be economic stability because children will understand what they have to do when they're young.
It's
And
crazy. It's crazy.
also,
Yeah, go ahead.
then also confidence building. I mean, when you're financially secure, you tend to have more confidence.
Absolutely, Rainy. Look at they're learning math, geography, history, science, but that's not practical unless you're going to become a scientist or a geologist. But practically is everybody has to go out, they have to get a job, they have to pay bills, they have to take care of debt, they have to take care of their cash flows, they have to get a mortgage. Like who's teaching that? If it's not coming from mom and dad, which really the schools are throwing it on, but mom and dad are not so great at doing it themselves, and they might not be really great at transmitting that information to their kids. Well, there should be entire courses just on financial management and financial literacy. It's power. It gives people, wisdom and knowledge that they can actually practically use now to get them out of difficult situations so that they're not behind the eight ball with huge amounts of debt, or not paying their bills, or not having money to buy a house, or to have a car, or to put your kids through university. It all comes from financial literacy. So I'm with you, and I really feel that it should be a curriculum that's brought down by the government, by the school boards, and if not, if they're not going to do it, organizations have to be responsible for it. They've got to take it, the yoke on their shoulders and do it. I'm dealing with a group right now, Rohini. It's a women's group of divorcees. So you've got this huge amount, 50% of divorces today, and suddenly women are finding themselves in situations where the husband maybe did all the planning, and now they don't know the language, they don't know the ABCs of it, and now they're creating a community, and we're actually building that to provide them with women teaching other women about financial literacy, because it really is freedom. If you have financial literacy and you know what you're doing, you don't have all this stuff renting space in your brain. It's like deer in the headlight stuff. So I agree with you, Rain. It starts really from day one in school.
No, definitely. Now think about it, Mark. When you go on appointments or when the clients come and see you, are you not coaching them and teaching them what they need to do? Had
Yeah,
if they
yeah,
had, yeah, I mean, I did that for 38 years. Had they known this, a little bit of this in school, I think we would have had more effective decision-making people, and decisions would be made faster with more informed information.
yeah, I agree. Look, I still feel that even, you come and you see somebody who's very successful and you think, oh, they probably know so much. They know everything. I just came from a meeting right now with a business owner. He's looking at selling his business for about $4 million. And, he's not even set up properly in order to take advantage of the $1.25 million lifetime capital gains exemption. And he
Yeah.
might not be when he gets to the point of a sale. Why doesn't he know that? He's an intelligent person. He's got a business with 100 people, but I think that it's foolish of us to assume that people know this information, because they don't. They're just so busy, and they've just never had an address to teach them.
Yeah, and or they've had other people do it for them. In case of many
Right.
women, in case of young adults, their parents are doing it, but when it comes to their turn, the other thing is that I find that people have lived in debt for so many years. They saw their grandparents do it, they saw their parents do it, so the children think it's normal, right? So it's time for a change. It's time to educate them to say, no, it's not normal to live in debt and die in debt and then pay taxes, when there are ways like legacy philanthropy, like you talked about earlier, and you're going to explain to us that, that can help you.
Yeah, I like to make it very simple.
Yeah,
Rohini, when it comes to financial literacy, there are two types of people. There are those who spend first, and then they save what's left over. Most of those people have more month than money. And then there are those people who save first and then spend. And
spend.
those people generally have money for things. And that first group ends up working for the second group all over their life. And that second group really doesn't, they don't have to be CPAs or investment professionals. They just have to realize that you need to have 3 to 6 months money of savings or money available in case of emergencies. Number one. Number two is debts will kill you. You can't pay 20% of non-deductible interest
Oh,
off.
yeah.
So you have
Yeah.
to look at that. Third is there's investments, the whole investment portfolio. You have to learn about that, RSPs, TFSAs, etc. And then the last thing is risk management, having a will, having life insurance, protecting your income. Now, those are four pieces, but what you have to do now is, if you pay yourself first, now you have to allocate that money to those four quadrants. And just doing something as simple as that, you're going to be way ahead of 90% of the population.
Exactly. You are going to be way ahead of 90% of the population. And, it's time to listen to your financial advisors and planners. Like, I mean, you with wealth insurance, and I think I read somewhere, Mark, that you had a very large case come your way very early in your career, right? That
Yeah, I
you,
did. As a matter of fact, yeah. that
And
kind
that
of
was,
helped me to go onto the radio and have a bunch of a bunch of advertising. We built out our illnessprotection.com as a result of that. It was actually an interesting case, Rohini.
yeah,
We were advertising something called critical illness insurance on the radio, and we heard from a property manager. He was qualified at spending about $1,500 a month. I went to the building, which was out of my environmental niche, and it's a bit of a rundown building. And I was going to see this guy. And I was a little nervous, and I went in and I see an older man in one office. He's not the man I'm meeting with. And then I go into the other office. Turns out that man in the other office has been buying and selling real estate for the older man for the last 30 years. And they really wanted me to come in and sort of help with some of the planning. So he brings the elderly man in anyway, no will, wife's a US citizen, etc. I said, do me a favor, send me a list of all your assets, what you paid for them, what they're worth today, and I'll bring in our people and we'll start working. Anyway, it wasn't even tacked up, Rohini. I get a fax with that big fax, and I take out my calculator. Guy's worth $150 million with
very
no
impressive.
will. Wife's a US citizen, no insurance, no planning. Now, that you think is the exception. And I want to tell you, Reed, it's not the exception. That's actually the norm. You need People need a team. You need a team of professional advisors. You need an accountant. You need a lawyer. You need an investment person. You need an insurance person. You need a philanthropic person. And that team has to collaborate and talk to themselves about you, and you have to be part of the process. You can't rely on one person anymore. The world's become so hyper specialist, you can't be all things to all people. So,
Yes.
you don't have to be an expert, but have experts around you.
No, exactly. And that case turned out to be very good for you, didn't it?
It was
You helped
very good.
somebody. Yeah.
It was over seven figures of compensation. I've done work with that family for many years, and guess what? They never bought any critical illness insurance. That was the thin edge of the wedge that got their attention, which allowed us to get in front of them on a favorable basis. So, if any advisors are listening, what's your thin edge of the wedge? You can't just be a generalist and what is it that you do? Don't be 30 miles wide and 3 inches deep. You have to be 30 miles deep and 3 inches wide. If
Right.
you want to do all the other stuff, you can work with other professionals, but be an expert in something.
Be an expert and don't give up. Keep going, because there are a lot of people out there who need help. I remember cases when I, just came upon, and it was never thought that I'd close a large case, but it just happened. You talk to people and you find that they need help, right? But they need to be shown how and why they need help. So
Yeah,
specializing is so important.
I also think that people need to see first how much you care before you show them how much you know.
Of
Like,
course.
unfortunately, a lot of industries are very much of people who are product pushers. Sell a concept. We're living in a time when people really need problem solvers. They need to be
Yeah.
people who are looking at the big picture, who are helping you
Mhm.
with the picture and filling in those gaps. So, just food for thought for the future.
And what happens is, it's unfortunate, but you do meet people who don't have the best interest in their heart for you. So if you already have a little bit of knowledge, it's easier for you to make a decision whether a person is giving you the right advice or not giving you the right advice. Would you not agree?
Yes, I would agree with that,
Yeah.
and it should be that you can kind of tell what kind of person you're dealing with, because if they're very fast speaking and they're very seem very anxious and they're sitting on the edge of their seat, probably thinking, "Boy, you better buy something for me, otherwise I can't pay my mortgage this month."
Um,
It should be people who are not in a hurry. They've got a busy business, but you know, the, timing is everything. They should be people who are very generous with their time, sharing thoughts, and hopefully you being a resource for the individual. That's what we want to be. We just want to be part of the team and be a resource.
yes, and by having some knowledge, this helps you navigate financial responsibilities without relying on external advisors for help, because you will be able to make a decision faster. Yeah, if you meet a
Yeah.
fast-speaking person, like you said, right? Yeah,
Some people
right.
don't have the patience for you at all, so you better come on.
Exactly.
You better ask them right at the beginning. How much time do you have? You know.
Yeah, that's right. Now let's talk about women in the financial industry, just for a little bit there. I hear that in
Yep.
Canada right now, the problem is that a lot of women are leaving the industry, or there are very few women in the industry, because it's not an easy industry to be in. And as the generation, as many of the baby boomers, let's the men are passing on, women are coming into a large amount of wealth. So when they're coming to this kind of wealth, they are hoping that there'll be other women who can help them, because women seem to trust women more. I'm not saying that they don't trust you, Mark, but still, there is that connection between women. So, you know, how do you think this is going to go about? Because you talked about accidental philanthropy, you talk about legacy philanthropy, and women are the ones who are going to need this more than men. Well, generally speaking, because that's what happens. But what do you think? How do you propose that this should be corrected,
Yeah, I
if
think,
it
look at
could
the
be?
best way. Yeah, I think first of all, the best way to find the right address for you to get help is by perhaps speaking to somebody you trust and look up to and admire and is successful, and asking them who do they work with, whether it's a man or a woman. Again, I'm not biased there, but there is definitely a feeling that another woman with another woman is a good fit, especially since you can share in so many commonalities there. But I feel that if you're a woman and want to get involved in the financial services business, and you're in a golden day, because there are less women, there are more women coming into the business, but there's going to be a ginormous wealth transfer. A
Yeah.
ginormous wealth transfer. And my mother-in-law just turned 80 today, actually. We just were celebrating, and she had her sister came in from Montreal, and she has a group of 10 women that she goes to Florida with, and they're on their way down for a few months. And all 10 of those women are widows. They're not divorcees. They're widows. That means those women were forced to be put onto the hot seat to now suddenly be able to take care of the family money, the family wealth. If the husband was looking after that up until then, that's going to be deer in the headlights. You're already dealing with an emotional event. Now all of a sudden you're dealing with a financial event. Where is everything? How do I manage it? That's why these conversations are so important to be had by spouses, in case of, God forbid, a risk. But now that a woman is in a situation where she is now the custodian for that family, she needs to find somebody that can help her understand the lay of the land, do the planning, and she has to invest in the process. She can't be just a voyeur and trust somebody to do the job. She has to become knowledgeable herself. The
Yeah.
more skin in the game that she has, the
Yeah.
more knowledgeable, the more successful she's going to be at navigating that ship.
Financial knowledge can reduce the stress and anxiety during the very emotional time. If you know you've got things in handle, knowing how to manage your finances can provide, you know, some sort of relief to you, because that's the first thing that comes in your mind. Believe me, I've done this for 38 years, and every time the first thing they say, how are we going to pay for the funeral? How are we going to pay for the credit cards? Those are the things. How am I going to feed the children? If you know what you have to do, that's, I think about 60% of your stress. Then
Look
you
at
can
I
deal
got
with,
a call.
yeah,
Yeah, Rohini, I got a phone call 3 weeks ago
yeah,
from a client's wife. The client was a busy lawyer who was also a serial entrepreneur, and they were out for dinner, and he took ill, and he ended up spending 31 days in the hospital. She
oh,
was beside herself, calling us like, I don't know where anything is.
yeah,
I don't know where the power of attorney is. I don't know the digital passwords. I don't know any of the files that he's working on. Imagine. And COVID in particular really made us much more sensitive to that, because it made us much more aware of our mortality and our incompletions, right? And that those incompletions, whether you articulate them or not, they rent space in our brain and they take away energy. So, we have to get them out of our brain and get working on them. But by all means, it's a very important process for everyone to undertake.
no, that's for sure. Now, do you want to just talk about the legacy philanthropy a little bit, Mark? What is
Sure.
legacy
So
philanthropy?
yeah, so what it is most people will give money to charity. If somebody says, "Hi, Rohini, I'm riding my bike to Barrie to conquer cancer. Will you sponsor me?" You're like, "Oh, for sure." Do. Give your credit card, $10, 20, whatever the case might be, and a lot of people do that. But what they haven't done is they haven't. They're still giving while they're alive credit cards and checks as donations, but those are the least cost and tax effective way of giving. That's number one. Okay, the least cost and tax effective way. And secondly, they're not building in strategic philanthropy into their estate planning. And the government basically says that you can use charitable donations in any given year to mitigate up to 75% of your net taxable income. On death, you can use charitable donations to mitigate 100% of your estate taxes, 100%, including going back the prior year. That means if somebody's sitting there with, a whole bunch of money, and that's why your listeners must know that the people who need to hear this message the most are the singles, widows, and divorcees the most.
Yeah.
Singles, widows, and divorcees. Why? Because in Canada, when you die and you have a spouse, there's something called a tax-free spousal rollover. So everything rolls over to your surviving spouse tax-free, and the tax is not due until the second to die of a husband and wife. But if you're single, widowed, or divorced, you're one incident away from a huge tax distribution. That includes if you have an RSP that's worth $1 million. Hello, it's not worth a million
50%
dollars.
gone.
It's only
Mm,
worth $470,000 because the government's going to take 53.53% of that in Ontario. Most people are not aware of the net that they've got. They only know about the gross. So
gross.
strategic philanthropy is saying, let's move the shells around, and instead of money going to Ottawa, which is good, Ottawa needs the money, but nobody says you have to leave a tip, right? You don't have to give a tip. Let's move that money around and create some legacy for our children, our grandchildren, our great grandchildren, or just for causes that we really, really care about. That requires sitting down with a professional and having that conversation. How do you want to be remembered?
That's right. Now, I'm sure that you're using life insurance to do the planning, right? Does everybody have to be healthy to get this done?
Yeah. So, first of all, many of them are just using existing policies they already have in place that
Yeah.
maybe they don't need, that wouldn't move the dial. Like last Friday, we had a client with a $250,000 policy that they don't need, right? It was bought years ago for other purposes. Because their health had gone awry, we were able to donate that $250,000 policy to a charity. He received a $180,000 fair market charitable receipt for that.
Yeah.
180,000. That saves him $90,000, and the charity now recognizes him as giving $250,000, and that was just him saving a whole bunch of tax, creating a lot of money for charity by moving the shells around. So, life insurance, if you have existing policies or you have existing term insurance policies, they can be converted at any time with any medical evidence. They can be created into charity. Or in most of the cases that we have, Rohini, we're looking at situations where, let's say, somebody has $1 million of estate taxes.
Yeah.
$1 million. So maybe they'll go ahead and they'll buy a life insurance policy to pay that $1 million of tax. And it only costs them pennies on the dollar as opposed to 200 cent before tax dollars. If they're charitable, instead of leaving $1 million to Ottawa, why not take that life insurance policy and make it into a $2 million policy and instead leave that to charity when you die? The charity gets $2 million, which gets you a charitable receipt for $2 million.
Mm,
And now the $1 million of tax becomes $1 million of charity. And you're
charity.
remembered for giving $2 million to charity as opposed to $1 million to Ottawa, and it costs you pennies. That's what we mean by including strategic philanthropy using life insurance into your estate planning. It's a very beautiful thing. And when people see it, they go, why don't more people know about this or do it? Because unless the advisor is saying something, or the charities telling their major donors about this, or the schools are telling people, nobody's going to know about it. So it's a missed opportunity.
Definitely, definitely. And now, just speak on the mentoring, the Platinum you've started, of course, which looks very, very interesting. I went through it earlier. Do you talk about the philanthropy and, planning? Is that part of your planning? Because it's so good for new advisors to come in and do a course with you, because
Absolutely.
that would give them so much more to go out to see clients with, right?
Absolutely. Look at I've been very fortunate that I've had some of the best mentors in the industry that
Yeah.
really were so generous. They gave me their time, they shared their secret sauce, and they were tough on me as well. It's not like it was a walk in the park. They were also persistent, Rohini.
Mm.
Expected a
Good.
lot. So so what
Good.
happened was, but our business is a very lonely business right now. They don't have a lot of mentorship. The
It's
insurance
not
companies
there.
are not giving the education. The MGAs are limited,
Yeah.
in terms of people. So where do you go? So when COVID happened, me and my dear friend Jim Ruda, who's one of North America's top tactical coaches, we started doing some online master classes. People wanted more. We had about 150 people go through it. They wanted more. So we created something called Power of Platinum. It's now in its fifth year. And what it is, it's a mentoring coaching program. I'm the mentor, Jim's the coach. We have a 2 hour live virtual Zoom meeting where there's an entire curriculum that helps people become experts on high net worth life insurance, business insurance, strategic philanthropy, practice management, marketing, working with professionals, conversations to have, the whole interview process. We have, and it's 12 months. We also have a WhatsApp group where I share inspirational pieces every few times a week, on what's going on to keep people connected. We put them into study groups if they'd like, and what the best part is Jim gives 30 minutes of one-on-one tactical coaching, and then they also have an opportunity to collaborate with me and my team on cases where they might not be experts yet or might not be comfortable working with charities or with wealthy people. And I've always been a big believer, Rohini, that 50% of a big number is way better than 100% of nothing or some small
Nothing.
numbers.
Yeah,
So they
exactly.
so they learn it.
Yeah.
So they can go to powerofplatinum.com. All the information is there. Our next group is starting October the 15th. So I'm hoping this message goes out to a bunch of advisors. Please register. It's going to be a great group and we're going to have an amazing year. The our advisors have got to be 5 times top of the table, 2 times top of the table, top of the we want people to be very successful. And that's my dopamine, is passing on that legacy to other advisors so that they can be successful for themselves and their families.
Yes, I think and the best part is that when you do help a family member or you do help a family in need, it's better than any top of the table because you've helped somebody who's in a very bad shape emotionally, and they've lost somebody, or you've saved somebody from taxes, which is equally as bad. But and that feeling is so great. It's better than anything else in this
Look
world.
at I remember being at a funeral a bunch of years back,
Yeah,
and it was with a dentist who had passed away, and I saw the banker was there, the accountant, the lawyer, you know and I knew everybody was going to send flowers and make charitable donations, but I knew I was going to be delivering a 7-figure check to that
yeah,
family, which meant those people are important, but I'm even more important. So
yeah,
unfortunately, let's have those conversations before somebody gets to that point, while the sun is
exactly.
shining, to see the planning that they can do.
So I want to thank you, Mark. This was just amazing. Your information was unbelievable. I think we're going to probably podcast you again, and I'll tell you in advance. It'll probably be in a few months, so that I don't have to chase you again, right? But um, in order to get in touch with you, it's pretty straightforward. I think we can see your billboard at the back. There's a phone
Yeah,
number there. But you want to
Mark.
tell us, if we're going to email you, how do we get in touch with you?
Yeah, Mark, M-A-R-K, at wealthinsurance.com. They can go to the website, wealthinsurance.com. Myself, 416-871-4357. Please be in touch. We have got a great team here. As I said, there's no obligation in having either a first meeting or even a second opinion review. But the most important thing is to take care of these things while the sun is shining. And right now, what's going on in the world, there's just so much change and so much loud noise. If anything, I'd say the world needs a big hug and a kiss more than ever at this point in time.
Yeah,
But
tell me.
but the
Yeah.
freedom comes from knowing what you don't know and taking care of it. Don't be an ostrich, just putting your head in the sand leaves you and your family in a very risky situation if anything should go awry.
So, from step by step talks, I'm going to encourage everybody, who's listening, women, understand your finances, get in touch with Mark. It's so important because he will guide you the right way. And if, start educating your children. It's so important because right now, financial planning is not in the curricula of schools, and something that I'm going to keep promoting more and more. And my passion is women being financially independent because I've lost a few friends in the last few years. Fortunately, they were my friends and they had life insurance, so their families were okay. But for the ones who were not, or they had planned properly, or disability insurance, or critical illness, they're all very important today. Um, I'm going to keep promoting that. But Mark, I really want to thank you for being my guest today. Like I said, I'm going to be badgering you in the next few months for another interview to see how it's going. But this is Rohini Kapoor from Step by Step Talks. If you liked our interview, please hit share, subscribe, and like. You can get me at stepbysteptalks.com. If you message me, I will message you back personally and confidential within 48 hours. And thank you for listening to us again. And thank you very much, Mark, for this interview today.
Thank you for having me, Rainey. I just want to give kudos to you. You know what? It's amazing how you're taking the torch to really be a beacon of light to ladies and women out there to help them become financially independent. And it all comes from giving them wisdom and knowledge. And you're a proprietor of that. So thank you so much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark, and talk to you soon.
All the best. Thank you.
Bye.